The stranger in the royal garden. The twin moons of Terethia shone like pale lanterns above the royal palace. The night air was cool, filled with the soft hum of alien insects and the faint glow of silver flowers that covered the garden floor. The world was peaceful on the surface, yet beneath that calm, tension slept like a hidden serpent. No one expected a human to walk those sacred paths again. Not after the Terran Wars. Eli, a quiet human engineer, walked slowly through the marble corridor that led to the outer gardens. He had come from Earth only a few days ago, sent by a trade guild to repair the palace's ancient defense grid. He was tall but gentle in his movements, the kind of man who fixed things in silence. Most aliens in the palace avoided his gaze, whispering behind their hands, calling him the Terran stranger. But Eli didn't care. He was used to being an outsider. He carried a small toolkit in one hand and a datapad in the other, the light from it painting faint blue lines across his face. He had finished the main repairs early that night and decided to take a walk. The garden was said to be older than the city itself, a living monument built by the first queen. Tall glass trees shimmered like crystal pillars, and the air was sweet with perfume from glowing vines. Eli felt calm for the first time in years, but then he heard it, a sound that broke the stillness. It was a soft cry, a child's sob, hidden somewhere between the tall silver bushes. At first, Eli thought it might be a bird or some local creature, but the sound came again, fragile and real. He followed it, his boots crunching lightly against the crystal path. As he turned a corner, he saw her, a small figure sitting under a tree, her head buried in her knees, her silver hair glowing faintly under the moonlight. Eli stopped, unsure. "Hey," he said softly, "are you all right?" The girl lifted her face and his breath caught. She was no ordinary child. Her skin was pale blue with faint patterns that shimmered like water ripples, and her eyes, large and bright, looked like liquid stars. She stared at him, frightened at first, then curious. "You're human," she whispered, her voice trembling like a broken note. Eli knelt beside her, keeping his distance so she wouldn't be scared. "Yeah," he said gently. "I'm human. My name's Eli. What's yours?" The girl looked away, brushing a tear with the back of her small hand. "I'm not supposed to talk to outsiders," she said, her tone full of fear. "Then I'll just sit here quietly," Eli replied with a small smile, setting his toolkit on the ground. Minutes passed in silence. The night wind moved the flowers, making them glow brighter. The girl sniffled once, then looked at him again, studying his face carefully. "You're different from what they said," she murmured. "You don't look dangerous," Eli chuckled softly. "Well, I left my scary face back on Earth," he said playfully, and the child almost smiled. Then she reached into her pocket and pulled out a small silver locket. Shaped like a tear, it opened with a faint chime, showing a tiny hologram of a tall alien male wearing a royal crest. "This was my father's," she said quietly. "He went to the war and never came back." Eli's heart sank. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice gentle. She looked at him again, her eyes shining with something innocent yet deep. "Are you from Earth?" she asked softly. "Yes," Eli said, "born and raised." The girl hesitated, then took a shaky breath. "Then, will you be my Earth father?" The world seemed to stop for a moment. Eli blinked, unsure he had heard her right. "What?" he whispered. The little princess lowered her head, her small hands shaking. "You fix things, you're kind. You don't shout like the others." "My father used to smile like that," she said. "I just thought, maybe you could be my father just for tonight." Eli felt something twist in his chest, a mix of sadness and warmth. He didn't know what to say. He wasn't a soldier or a hero, just a man trying to do his job. But there, in that quiet garden, the loneliness in her eyes broke something inside him. He nodded slowly. "All right, little one," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "I can be your Earth father. For tonight." The girl's eyes widened, and a smile slowly grew on her face, pure and bright. She leaned closer and whispered, "Thank you, Earth father." For the first time in years, Eli felt something he thought he had lost. A sense of purpose, of belonging but unseen to both of them. In the shadows beyond the glowing vines, someone was watching. A tall figure wrapped in royal silk, her face hidden beneath a golden veil. The queen herself stood silent, her eyes wide and shimmering with tears. She had come to check on her daughter, the lonely Princess Lyra. And now, hidden behind the vines, she had just heard the one sentence she never thought she would hear again. "Will you be my Earth Father?" Her breath caught, and her heart trembled as the old wound of loss reopened. The memory of her lost mate flashed in her mind. The same smile, the same voice, the same warmth. The Queen pressed a trembling hand to her chest, tears running down her cheeks silently. In the stillness of the night, she whispered to herself, "Just like him? He's just like him." The human and the princess sat together beneath the glowing trees, unaware of the eyes that watched them, unaware that this simple act of kindness would soon change the fate of two worlds forever. The Queen's secret. The Queen of Terethia stood behind the crystal vines long after the human and her daughter had left the garden. Her golden cloak shimmered softly in the moonlight, but her eyes were far away, trapped in memories older than peace itself. She had once loved a warrior, a brave king who stood beside humans in the final war. He had believed that humans could bring unity to the stars, but he never returned. His ship lost in a battle that ended too quickly and too quietly. From that day, she had banned all humans from her world, building high walls of fear and silence, and yet tonight, one human, this quiet engineer named Eli, had somehow broken through those walls without even trying. The Queen felt something stir inside her heart, something she thought had died long ago. She turned away from the garden, walking slowly down the glowing corridor toward her throne chamber. Each step echoed softly against the glass floor. Carrying the weight of the past in the royal chambers, the young Princess Lyra sat on her bed, holding the silver locket tightly in her small hands. Her eyes still glowed faintly from tears, but now they were filled with warmth. She looked out the window toward the human's quarters, wondering if he was asleep. For the first time since her father vanished, she did not feel alone outside her room. Two royal guards whispered quietly, their voices low. "The Queen won't like this," one said. "A human walking freely in the palace. She already knows," the other replied, glancing nervously toward the throne room. "And she hasn't said a word." Down in the lower halls, Eli sat at a workbench surrounded by old tech parts and holographic wires. He couldn't sleep. The princess's words kept echoing in his mind. "Will you be my Earth Father?" He sighed, rubbing his eyes. The sound of rain tapping against the window filled the silence. He had fixed machines all his life, but he had never been asked to fix a heart. And yet somehow that was what he wanted to do now. Suddenly, the heavy door to his quarters slid open with a hiss. Eli stood quickly, expecting a guard, but instead, the Queen herself entered. Her tall form was wrapped in royal gold and silver, her eyes calm but sharp as starlight. "Human," she said, her voice smooth but heavy with power. "Do you know who that child was?" Eli bowed slightly. "I guessed she was important, maybe royalty," he said carefully. The Queen's lips curved faintly, almost a smile. "She is my daughter." Eli froze, unsure how to respond. "She shouldn't have been outside alone," the Queen continued. "But I watched what happened." Her gaze softened. "You did not mock her, you did not fear her, and you did not lie." Eli nodded slowly. "She's just a child," he said quietly. "No one should cry like that." The Queen's eyes flickered with something close to pain. "She has not smiled since the day her father's ship vanished," she whispered. "Until tonight." Eli said nothing, but the silence between them was filled with understanding. He could see the sorrow she carried, the loneliness that even a crown could not hide. After a long pause, the Queen turned toward the window, looking out at the glowing horizon. "The Council fears your kind," she said. "They still remember the war." "I wasn't part of that," Eli said softly. "I only build things. I don't destroy." His words made the Queen close her eyes for a moment, as if she was listening to a ghost. Finally, she spoke again, her voice quieter now. "Long ago, a human saved my world." Eli looked up, surprised. "He was an engineer like you," she continued. "He built the shields that protected our cities during the fire rains." Her hand trembled slightly. "He wore the same uniform you wear now." Eli's eyes widened. "You mean?" "Yes," she said before he could finish. "He was my mate, the king. Your kind called him Captain Darius Hale." Eli stepped back in shock. He had read that name once in an old Terran archive. The captain who led the Peace Fleet. The man who disappeared after saving countless colonies. The Queen's eyes shimmered as she spoke his name. "He was brave and stubborn, just like you," she whispered. "And when he left, He promised to return. Her gaze drifted to the stars beyond the window. I waited many seasons, but he never came back. Eli felt the weight of her loss, the kind of silence that no words could heal. He wanted to say something, anything, but the queen raised her hand gently. "Do not speak," she said softly. "I only came to see if the stars had sent me a memory or a message." She turned toward the door, her cloak whispering against the floor. As she reached the threshold, she paused and looked back at him. "You may stay in the palace until your repairs are complete," she said. "But speak of this to no one." Eli bowed again. "Understood, Your Majesty." The queen nodded, then added quietly, "And thank you for being kind to her." With that, she left. The door closing behind her with a soft hum, Eli stood alone in the quiet room, the hum of alien technology filling the air. He stared out the window toward the garden, where the moonlight still shimmered on the silver leaves. He felt something strange, like destiny was pulling him into a story written long before his birth. Somewhere deep in the palace, the queen sat on her throne, her fingers tracing the old royal crest. Her heart ached with questions she dared not ask. Could this human be connected to her lost king? Or was fate simply repeating itself in another form? Outside, the rain slowed to a gentle drizzle. The palace lights dimmed, and far beyond the walls, among the clouds, a faint signal pulsed. An old Terran distress code long thought dead. Neither the queen nor Eli knew it yet. But that forgotten signal would soon uncover the truth behind everything, and the bond between human and alien would change the galaxy forever. Whispers through the halls. The palace of Terethia was quiet in the morning light. But that silence was not peace. It was the kind of silence that comes before questions, before fear begins to whisper through the walls. Servants walked quickly, speaking in low voices, their eyes darting toward the human quarters as they passed. Rumors had begun to spread, rumors of the human who dared to speak with the royal child, of the stranger who walked the queen's halls and lived to tell of it. Eli had no idea that his quiet kindness had become the heart of palace gossip. He woke early as usual, ready to return to his repair work. His hands steady, his thoughts restless. He couldn't forget the queen's words, the story of her lost king, the human who once saved her world. There was something about it, something that connected to the strange Terran code he found in the palace's defense systems. A signal hidden deep in the network, blinking faintly like a heartbeat waiting to be noticed. In another wing of the palace, Princess Lyra ran through the long mirrored corridor, her small feet echoing softly. Her hand clutched the silver locket tightly against her chest. She was smiling again, something the servants had not seen in years. When she reached the dining hall, her mother, the queen, was already there, sitting in silence beside the crystal window. The morning light painted her golden crown with pale fire. "Mother," Lyra said softly, climbing onto her seat. "The human fixed my music sphere. It sings again." The queen looked at her daughter, her eyes soft but unreadable. "He is a mechanic. That is his work," she said quietly. Though her voice lacked its usual sharpness, Lyra smiled wider. "He also told me a story." "A story?" the queen asked, raising an eyebrow. "Yes," Lyra said proudly. "About a place called Earth, where people watch stars and grow flowers that look like ours." The queen looked down for a moment, her heart tightening. She hadn't heard the name Earth spoken in years, not since her king's last message elsewhere in the palace. Two council members whispered as they walked toward the throne room. "This human is dangerous," one hissed. "His presence disturbs the young heir." "Perhaps," the other replied. "But the queen has not ordered his removal. She has gone soft," the first said bitterly. "He reminds her of him." Their voices faded as they entered the grand hall, unaware that a small royal spy drone floated above, recording every word. Eli, meanwhile, had reached the lower defense sector. The air was cool and metallic, full of old humming machines and blinking lights. He connected his datapad to the main terminal and began the diagnostics. Lines of alien code flickered on the screen, mixed with human script, old Earth language buried inside royal systems. He frowned. "What the hell? This isn't supposed to be here," he murmured. The words "Terran Peace Fleet, Code 47A, active beacon detected" appeared faintly. Eli's eyes widened. "Impossible," he whispered, his pulse quickening. If this code was real, it meant one thing. The lost fleet that vanished during the war might still exist. He copied the data quietly, saving it onto a small crystal drive. He knew he needed to show someone, but who could he trust? The Queen maybe, but if the Council found out, they might see it as human manipulation. He sighed deeply, looking out the viewport at the city below. The alien towers shimmered under the twin suns, beautiful yet fragile. I didn't come here for politics, he said softly. But maybe fate had other plans. That evening, as the moons began to rise again, the Queen walked through the inner courtyard. Her thoughts heavy. The guards bowed as she passed, but she barely noticed. Something about that human unsettled her, not with fear, but with a strange familiarity. His eyes, his way of speaking, even the way he looked at Lyra with quiet patience. It all reminded her too much of the man she once loved. She stopped by the old fountain, the one built by her king, and placed her hand on its cool edge. Why now, she whispered to herself. After all these years, her thoughts were broken by a voice. Your Majesty. It was Eli standing a few steps away. Holding the small crystal drive, the guards reached for their weapons. But the Queen raised her hand. Leave us, she ordered. When they were alone, Eli bowed. Forgive my intrusion, Your Grace, but I found something in your defense systems. The Queen turned toward him. Curious, what kind of something? Eli hesitated, then handed her the drive. A signal, Terran origin, still active. It matches the code of the Peace Fleet. The Queen's eyes widened slightly, her hands trembling as she took the drive, her voice lowered to a whisper. You're certain? Yes, Eli said. It's faint, but it's there. She turned away, staring into the night sky as if trying to see beyond the stars themselves. Her heart pounded as an old hope flickered inside her chest. Could it be possible after all this time, that her king still lived? Eli saw the change in her face, the light that replaced her usual calm mask. Do not tell the Council, she said finally, her voice trembling slightly. Not yet. I understand, Eli said quietly. But if the signal is real, someone might be out there. The Queen nodded slowly, her golden eyes reflecting the moon's. Then we will find out, she said. But we must be careful. As they stood there in silence, the wind carried the faint sound of laughter. Princess Lyra stood on the balcony above, watching them curiously. She didn't know what her mother and the human were talking about, but deep inside she could feel something changing. The palace no longer felt cold, no longer empty. Something warm had begun to bloom again, like light spreading through the cracks of an old wall. In the far distance, beyond the city lights, a shadow moved across the sky, an unknown ship drifting silently among the stars. Its scanners had just locked onto the palace coordinates, and inside its dark bridge a voice said quietly, We found her. The Queen's line still survives. None of them knew it yet. But the signal Eli discovered had already awakened something old and dangerous. The peace of Terethia was about to end, and the bond between a human, a princess, and a queen would be tested in ways none of them could imagine. Echoes of a lost war night fell quietly over the golden towers of Terethia, but inside the palace hearts were far from still. Eli sat alone in the royal archive chamber, the glow from his datapad painting soft blue light across his face. The data he had found earlier looped endlessly on the screen, a repeating Terran distress code pulsing like a ghost's heartbeat. It was weak, old, but alive. He leaned closer, muttering, This signal shouldn't exist. He traced the coordinates and saw something strange. The signal wasn't coming from deep space, it was echoing from within the Terethian system itself, somewhere near the outer moons hidden in the debris of the final battlefield. Eli rubbed his forehead, trying to process it. If the Queen's lost king truly commanded that fleet, then maybe, just maybe, someone had survived the war. A soft chime sounded behind him. The door opening quietly, the Queen entered, her long robes whispering against the marble floor. Her face calm, but her eyes stormed with emotion. You found something, she said. Her voice low, Eli turned the screen toward her. The signal's source, I think I can track it. The Queen stepped closer, her gaze fixed on the map of stars displayed in holographic light. That sector, she whispered, is forbidden. Why? Eli asked. Because that's where the final battle took place, she said quietly. Where my king's ship was last seen. Her voice trembled, but she steadied it quickly. It said the wreckage there is cursed, full of ghosts and metal. Eli looked at her. Ghosts don't send signals, he said softly. For a long moment, the Queen said nothing, only stared at the blinking light on the map. Then she turned away, her cloak catching the starlight like fire. If he is still out there. she whispered. I must know. In the corner of the room, a hidden surveillance drone blinked red and transmitted everything to the Royal Council chamber. The council elders watched the feed with grim faces. The Queen hides secrets from us, one hissed. She risks the throne for a human's lies. Another elder nodded. We should act before she does something reckless. The chamber filled with quiet agreement. Their plans already forming meanwhile. Princess Lyra wandered the empty corridors. Following the faint hum of her father's locket, she found herself outside the archive doors just as Eli and her mother spoke inside. Through the small gap, she saw the hologram of the star map glowing softly. Her small heart filled with hope, Father, she thought. You might be alive later that night. Eli stood on the palace balcony, staring up at the twin moons. The cool wind brushed against his face, carrying the scent of silver flowers. He thought about the Queen, about Lyra, about everything that had happened since he arrived. He had come here to fix machines, but somehow he was fixing hearts too. And now he was tangled in something far greater than his duty. Behind him, the Queen appeared again. Silent as the night breeze, human, she said softly. Why do you help us? Eli turned, his eyes calm. Because someone has to. She studied him for a moment, her golden eyes filled with something unspoken. You remind me of him, she whispered. The way you stand, the way you speak, it's almost cruel. Eli smiled faintly. Maybe I just believe in the same things he did. Before either could say more, a deep tremor shook the palace floor. The sound of alarms filled the air, red lights flashing across the walls. The Queen's voice turned sharp. Report, she commanded into her communicator. A soldier's voice answered, crackling with static. Your Majesty, raiders, unknown class, approaching from the outer rim. Eli's blood went cold. They must have picked up the same signal, he said. The Queen's eyes widened. The signal was bait. Outside the palace, streaks of fire crossed the night sky as small attack craft entered the atmosphere. The city shields flickered weakly. The defense grid Eli had been repairing was still incomplete. He grabbed his toolkit. If I can reroute power through the main conduits, I can hold them off. You can't, the Queen said quickly. It's too dangerous. Eli met her eyes, his voice steady. I've done dangerous before. Without waiting for permission, he ran toward the main power hall. His boots echoing on the metal floor, the Queen watched him go, her heart tight with fear and something she didn't want to name. Guards rushed past her, the air filled with the deep hum of defense cannons charging up outside. The alien sky burned bright with enemy ships descending like falling stars. Eli reached the control chamber and slammed the override panel open. Sparks flying, he reconnected the broken circuits manually. Electricity arcing around his hands, pain shot through him. But he kept going, gritting his teeth. The screen flashed green. The shields were up for a brief moment. The city below was safe again. In the throne hall, the Queen stood before her council, their holograms flickering with panic. Withdraw your forces, one elder shouted. You cannot defend the city alone. The Queen's voice was calm and powerful. Terethia will not fall again, not while I breathe. Outside the windows, the shields glowed blue, reflecting in her golden eyes. She thought of Eli out there, risking his life for a world that once hated his kind. And deep inside her heart, she felt something she hadn't in years. Trust. Maybe this human truly was sent by fate, not as a soldier of war, but as a healer of wounds left by it then. Through the roar of the distant battle, she heard a faint sound through her comms. It was Eli's voice, strained but alive. System stable, shields holding. But I need backup in Sector 9. The Queen grabbed her staff and turned to her guards. With me, she commanded. Her golden cloak flared as she moved, her crown shining like a flame. The Queen of Terethia was no longer watching from the shadows. She was stepping into the fire once more. Outside, under the twin moons, the war that had ended long ago was awakening again. And somewhere far beyond the clouds, the old Terran signal pulsed stronger, like the beating heart of a ghost that refused to die. The human protector. The sky above Terethia burned with fire. From the palace towers, streaks of light crossed the darkness like falling stars, each one a raider craft breaking through the clouds. Sirens howled across the royal city as energy bolts exploded against the shimmering blue shields. Inside the palace, chaos echoed through the halls. Guards shouting orders, servants rushing to shelter, and through it all, the Queen's calm voice carried above the storm. Evacuate the lower wings, she commanded. Protect the air. But deep down, her thoughts were somewhere else. Sector 9, where Eli had gone. Eli ran through the smoking corridors of the power complex. Sparks falling from broken conduits, his clothes were torn. His hands burned, but he kept moving. He reached the main reactor chamber just as another blast shook the city. The shockwave cracked the wall open, revealing the night sky and the burning horizon beyond. Through the opening, he could see the raider ships circling like dark birds, searching for a weakness. "The shields are holding," he muttered. But not for long. He connected his datapad directly into the reactor's core. His fingers moving fast across the keys, power levels spiked dangerously. Alarms screamed in red light. Eli gritted his teeth, sweat rolling down his face. Come on, just a little more." He rerouted the plasma lines manually, stabilizing the city grid. A massive surge of energy shot through the palace shield dome, expanding it outward and knocking 3 raider ships from the sky. The blast lit up the night like a new sun. In the royal wing, Princess Lyra stood by the window, her small hands pressed against the glass, watching the flashes outside. Her caretaker tried to pull her away. "Princess, you must go to the shelter." But Lyra shook her head, her voice small but firm. "He's out there. He promised to protect us." Tears filled her eyes as the walls trembled again. She whispered into the locket hanging around her neck, "Please, Earthfather, come back." Meanwhile, in the corridor leading to the reactor, the Queen strode forward with 2 royal guards beside her. Smoke curled around her golden armor, the crest of her house gleaming faintly in the flickering light. When she reached the power chamber, she found Eli lying on the floor near the main console. Barely conscious, she rushed to his side, kneeling beside him. "You fool," she whispered, her voice trembling. "You could have died." Eli coughed, smiling weakly. "Guess I'm still fixing things." The Queen pressed a hand to his chest, feeling his heartbeat. For a moment, her royal mask broke, and fear showed clearly in her eyes. She turned to her guards. "Get the med unit." But before they could move, another explosion shook the walls. The ceiling cracked open, metal and fire raining down. The Queen shielded Eli with her body, but the blast knocked her across the floor. From the gaping hole above, a raider drone descended, its red optics glowing like blood. It targeted her instantly, energy weapon charging. Eli forced himself up, his body screaming in pain. He grabbed a fallen blaster and fired, the bolt striking the drone dead center, shattering it into sparks. Then he collapsed again, smoke rising from the weapon. The Queen stared at him, stunned. "You saved me," she whispered. Eli managed a tired grin, just keeping promises. Moments later, the alarm shifted tone, the defense AI announcing, "Enemy boarding detected, royal sector compromised." The Queen's heart froze. "Lyra," she gasped. Without waiting for escort, she ran, her cloak tearing on jagged metal as she dashed through the smoke-filled corridors. Eli struggled to stand and followed, limping, ignoring the pain. They reached the royal nursery just as the door burst open. A group of raiders stormed in, tall armored figures with black visors and cruel eyes. One of them grabbed Lyra by the arm. The little princess screamed. Before the Queen could move, Eli charged in from the side, tackling the raider with raw force. The two crashed into a wall, fighting amid broken crystal. The alien was stronger, but Eli fought with something deeper, pure determination. He slammed the power cell of his toolkit into the raider's armor and triggered it. A burst of electric light exploded, throwing both of them apart. The Queen rushed forward, pulling Lyra into her arms. The child sobbed, clinging to her tightly. "Mother, he saved me." Eli groaned on the floor, smoke rising from his sleeve. His breathing ragged, the Queen turned to him. Her eyes wide with emotion, she whispered softly, "You are not just a human. You are our protector." Outside, the battle began to fade, the city's defense grid fully powered now, the enemy retreating into the clouds from the balconies. Soldiers and citizens watched as the last raider ship vanished into the night. The shield dome shimmered one final time, then steadied into calm light. In the silent aftermath, the Queen knelt beside Eli once more, her golden crown tilted, her hair tangled, her armor scorched, but her eyes shone bright. She took his hand gently. "You risked everything for a world that does not even call you its own." Eli smiled faintly. "It's not about the world," he said weakly. "It's about the people." Lyra crawled beside him, holding his other hand. "Don't go," she whispered. "You promised to stay." Eli looked at her, his voice fading. "I'm not going anywhere." Med drones arrived, surrounding them in beams of white light. The queen stood, watching as they lifted Eli onto a stretcher, her heart heavy yet full. Around them, the fires of the city were dying down, replaced by the quiet hum of recovery. For the first time in many years, the queen felt the same feeling she once knew, hope. Later, as dawn painted the sky in shades of gold and blue, the queen stood on her balcony below her. The people chanted a new name, a name that would echo across worlds. They called him the Human Protector. And as she looked toward the medical wing where Eli rested, the queen whispered softly, "Maybe the stars sent you back to finish what he started." Far above the planet, hidden among the drifting wreckage of the old war, a faint beacon blinked again. Its frequency matched the signal Eli had found. But now it pulsed faster, as if something had awakened. The message repeated endlessly through the void. "Terran Peace Fleet, Unit Hail, status alive." The queen stared up at the twin suns rising, a tear sliding down her cheek. The past was no longer buried, and the future of both their worlds had just begun. The queen's decision. The palace of Terethia lay in silence after the long night of battle. Smoke drifted over the city, and the twin suns rose slowly through the mist. The people stood among the ruins, their hearts filled with fear and wonder. They had seen death from the skies, but they had also seen a human stand between them and destruction. In the throne chamber, the queen sat upon the high seat, her golden armor still scorched from the fight. Her eyes were weary, but her spirit was unbroken. Before her stood the royal council, 12 elders in shimmering robes, their faces cold and proud. One of them stepped forward, his voice sharp. "Your Majesty, this cannot continue." The queen looked down from her throne, her tone calm. "Continue." The elder slammed his staff upon the floor. The Terran stranger defied protocol, interfered with royal command, and endangered the air. Another voice joined. "He must be exiled immediately," the people whisper already. "They call him protector, but soon they will call him ruler." Murmurs rippled through the chamber like wind over water. The queen rose slowly, the golden light of dawn catching her crown. Her voice echoed through the hall, low but filled with power. "You speak of danger, but who faced it last night? Was it you?" The elders fell silent. She stepped down from the throne, her eyes blazing. "While you hid behind walls of debate, a human with no title and no promise bled for this world." Her hand clenched at her side. "He saved my daughter, he saved your city, he saved you." The oldest counselor frowned. "He is not one of us." The queen turned her gaze upon him. "Then perhaps it is time to ask what we are." Her words struck them like thunder. "Have we become so proud that we cannot see courage unless it wears our colors?" she asked. Silence filled the air, thick and heavy. From the far end of the chamber, soft footsteps approached. Princess Lyra walked forward, small and steady, holding the silver locket in both hands. Her voice was clear and pure. "If he goes, I will go with him." Gasps echoed across the room. The queen's eyes softened instantly. "Lyra," she whispered, but the child shook her head. "He kept his promise, he protected us, that means he belongs here." The counselors looked at each other nervously. One of them hissed, "Your Majesty, the child is too young to—" The queen lifted her hand sharply. "Enough." She stepped to the center of the chamber, her golden cloak flowing behind her like fire. She reached into her sash and pulled out a small crystal emblem, the royal seal of Terethia. The council froze, for no ruler had given that away in centuries. She walked straight toward Eli, who stood at the edge of the hall, weak but awake, leaning on a guard for support. His face was pale, bandaged, yet his eyes were steady. The queen stopped before him and held out the seal. "From this day forward," she said, her voice carrying to every corner of the hall, "you are the guardian of the royal line." Eli stared at her in disbelief. "Your Majesty, I'm not—" She interrupted gently. "You are exactly what this world needs." The council erupted in protest, voices clashing. "A human cannot bear royal authority. It breaks every law. This is madness." But the queen only raised her hand and silence fell again. "My decision is final," she said. "Terethia owes him life itself, and I will not see honor turned to shame." Eli knelt slowly, one knee touching the shining floor. He bowed his head, his voice quiet. "Then I accept, not for power, but for the promise I made." Lyra ran to him, hugging him tightly. Tears of joy in her bright eyes, she whispered, "You said you'd protect me, now you really must." Eli smiled, the weight of the new title heavy yet strangely right. The queen placed her hand gently on both their shoulders. Her heart swelled with pride, yet deep inside, fear lingered, because she knew this decision would not stay hidden long, far beyond the palace walls. The surviving raiders sent encrypted messages to unseen masters, and in the cold of space, a fleet stirred, an army that still called itself the remnant of the war. They had heard the same signal, and they had marked the same coordinates. Back inside the palace, the people gathered in the streets, chanting softly as word spread. The human guardian, they called him, protector of the crown. The queen stood on the balcony beside Eli and her daughter, looking down at the crowd. The sun shone over them, golden and blue, and for the first time in generations, the people of Terethia cheered a human's name. Eli looked at the queen, his voice low. "They'll come for me now." She nodded, her eyes fierce. "Then they will find Terethia standing beside you." Lyra smiled, clutching their hands together. "We're a family now." And as the wind carried their words into the bright morning sky, the old Terran beacon pulsed again beyond the stars. Its rhythm changed, no longer a cry for help, but a response. A signal whispering through the void, acknowledged. Returning home, the queen looked up toward the heavens, feeling her heart tremble. Her voice was barely a whisper. If he is truly coming back, the galaxy will never be the same again. The promise of two worlds. The suns of Terethia rose over a city reborn. Light spilled through the crystal towers and across the repaired shields that now shimmered like liquid glass. The air smelled of rain and new metal, of life returning after the storm. Every street echoed with one name, the human guardian. Eli stood on the high balcony beside the queen and the young princess Lyra. The wind tugged at his cloak, carrying the cheers of the people far below. He still felt strange in the royal uniform they had given him, gold and blue mixed with Terran gray. He had never wanted glory, only to fix what was broken, but now the whole world looked to him as their protector. The queen watched him quietly, her golden eyes warm yet distant. "So much has changed in so little time," she said softly. "And yet peace still feels fragile." Eli nodded. "Peace always is." He glanced at Lyra, who leaned against the railing, her small hands clutching the silver locket. She smiled up at him. "Mother says the stars are talking again." Eli smiled back. "Maybe they are." That night, when the palace grew quiet, the three of them gathered in the observatory at the very top of the spire. The room was filled with maps of galaxies and ancient telescopes built by both humans and Terethians long ago. Outside the wide glass dome, space stretched endless and alive. Eli adjusted the signal console, the same one that had once carried the old Terran code. The queen stepped beside him, her voice steady. "You believe the fleet still exists?" "I don't just believe," he said. "I can feel it." He pressed a key, and the room filled with a soft pulse of sound. A faint rhythm echoed back. The same pattern he had found weeks before, but now stronger. "Clearer, closer," Lyra gasped. "It's answering." The queen's breath caught, her hands trembling slightly. Across the holographic map, a new light blinked near the outer moons, movement, not memory. Eli magnified the image and their eyes widened. Dozens of shapes emerged from behind the lunar shadow. Dark at first, then glinting silver under starlight. Old Terran warships, scarred. Ancient but alive, their engines burned softly. Carrying the symbol of the peace fleet. "They came back," the queen whispered, her voice breaking with disbelief. Lyra's eyes filled with tears. "Father," she breathed. Eli felt his chest tighten, his heart pounding. A message appeared on the console, the letters flickering in both human and alien script. "To the Queen of Terethia, this is Captain Darius Hale, returning from the dark." The queen sank to her knees, her hands covering her face, tears spilling freely after so many years. After all the doubt, the voice she had buried in memory had returned from the void. Eli knelt beside her, placing a hand on her shoulder. "He kept his promise," he said softly. She looked up at him, eyes shining. "And so did you." Hours later, the first peace fleet ship descended through the clouds, escorted by Terethian fighters. The city trembled, not from fear this time, but from wonder. Citizens gathered in the streets, staring as the great vessel landed upon the royal platform. Its hull bore marks of 100 battles, its engines glowing like the hearts of suns. The ramp lowered slowly, and through the mist stepped a tall figure clad in silver and blue. Captain Darius Hale, the lost king, his eyes bright, his face older but unbroken. The queen walked forward alone, the crowd silent behind her. When their eyes met, the years between them vanished like dust in the wind. Neither spoke for a moment. They simply stood there, letting time heal itself. Then she whispered his name, and he answered with hers. They embraced under the twin suns, and the people cheered until the sky itself seemed to sing. Eli stood beside Lyra, watching quietly, his heart full. The little princess looked up at him. "Earth Father," she said softly, "does this mean the war is truly over?" He nodded, smiling. "It means we finally understand what peace costs and why it's worth everything." Later that evening, a great gathering filled the royal courtyard. Humans and Terethians stood side by side for the first time in centuries. The banners of both worlds fluttered together in the wind, gold and blue woven with gray and silver. The queen stepped forward, her voice carrying clear across the crowd. "Tonight we begin again, not as enemies, not as strangers, but as family." She turned toward Eli and raised her hand. "The human guardian who stood when no one else would. He reminds us what courage means." The people cheered, chanting his name, their voices rising to the stars. Eli bowed deeply, humbled, and Lyra ran to him, hugging him tightly above them. The fleet lights glimmered like a second dawn. As the celebration continued, the queen and her king stood together at the balcony. She looked at Eli, her expression warm and certain. "You have given us back more than you know," she said. Eli smiled faintly. "Maybe it's not about giving. Maybe it's about finding what was never truly lost." The night stretched endless and bright. Two worlds, one born of steel, one of light, finally shared the same sky. And as the stars shimmered across the heavens, the ancient signal of war transformed into a new transmission. It carried a single line across the galaxy, a message that would be remembered for generations. Here at the edge of the stars, humanity and Terethia stand as one. The queen looked up, her hand resting over her heart. Lyra laughed beside her, the silver locket glowing softly, and Eli watched the horizon, where dawn met infinity. For the first time in his life, he felt not like a wanderer but like home.